If you've been job searching for a while, you know the feeling. An offer finally comes in, and your first instinct is just to be relieved, yet and say yes right away before anything can go wrong. And believe me, I get it. I've been there. But relief is not the same as fit. Saying yes too fast is one of the most common mistakes I see, and it usually isn't because people are careless. It's because after a long search, just getting an offer can feel like the finish line, even when it's really the start of a new decision. And I can share with you an experience that I had personally to let you know that yes, I've really been there. Welcome back to HR by Nnamtique. I'm Cynthia, and today I want to slow this moment down with you, not to talk you out of a good offer, but to help you actually see it clearly before you sign anything. So, in 2008, 2009, for those of you who are not aware, I got laid off, and it was during the Great Recession, when the housing market just absolutely imploded on itself, and a lot of employers laid people off. I lost a job where I was earning a considerable salary, and went from my almost six-figure salary to unemployment, $250 a week. That left my husband being the only person bringing in substantial income, and we had a small baby on formula and in diapers. So, as you can imagine, it was a test. So, I was out of work for 9 months. It was tough because it seemed like no one was hiring, even with all of my substantial HR experience. Um, it just felt like no one was hiring. So I finally got an offer from a a very well-known organization. I won't name the name, but and I felt a little bit of hesitation, but after speaking with my husband and discussing how tough it had become financially with us having that only one income and our child being so small and needing so many things, we decided that I would go ahead and take the job. Now, I will say this. I try not to say that I regret having taken the job, but it was not a good fit. It was a dog eat dog environment. I tried to talk to management because I did a lot of employee relations, and I saw where they were just killing employee morale, letting good employees go and just writing employees up instead of taking a different approach and just stepping back and seeing, okay, how can we preserve our good employees instead of writing people up and just killing their morale because the KPIs or the key performance indicators were, as I felt, unreasonable. So anyway, a lot of things happened, and from the stress, I ended up going into thyroid crisis, developed Graves' disease, and I had been diagnosed during my pregnancy, late in my pregnancy, so I know I had the tendency, but I'd already told my mom and my husband, and some friends that this job was just not the right fit, for me. And even my former director said that she didn't think the job was what I thought that it would be. But I needed a job, so I tried to, stick with it. So, anyway, that it just was a very, very stressful time. And after that, I decided that I would not just accept a job for the money anymore. And as a matter of fact, that job paid considerably, 30 something thousand dollars less than what I had been making when at the time that I got laid off. Fast forward to 2017, I had two offers. One with another really, really well-known, publicly traded organization. The base salary was low, but they were going to give me after 6 months stock options. And then the other was with my current organization, which is a public sector organization. And I accepted the job with the um, well-known publicly traded organization. But then I got the call for an interview while I was waiting for the um, the offer letter from the first organization, and pretty much after the interview, um, basically got the offer the next day because I told them I had already verbally accepted an offer from another organization. And after a lot of prayer and speaking with my family, my husband and my mom and siblings, I decided that I was going to go with the public sector organization, the government organization, instead of another private organization because I could already sense that dog eat dog type mentality. Yes, I could already sense that dog eat dog mentality. Even the HR director was borderline unprofessional in her tone and demeanor during the interview. And she prided herself because I remembered her kind of saying in a bragging tone that she was from New York, so she was very direct. And I was thinking, nah, this isn't the person I probably want to report to. So long story short, I rescinded my acceptance of that offer and I decided to go with the offer that was extended to me, the initial offer by my current organization. And here I am almost 10 years later with that organization. So to me, that says a lot. So give a lot of thought if you're able to. I know that it can be tough to turn down an offer, but try to give it a lot of thought and think about what's best for you and your family before you accept an offer because you don't want to be miserable just because you're bringing in um, a paycheck. So, um, here's a shift in the shift in thinking that I want you to make. An offer isn't just a number on a page. It's a whole work life wrapped in a letter. It's your manager, your workload, your growth path, your day-to-day environment, all bundled into one document. And so when you only look at the salary, you're really only looking at one piece of a much bigger picture. And the pieces you skip over are usually the ones that end up mattering the most 6 months in to the job. And now keep in mind, I'm not saying that means that every offer needs a week of second guessing. I mean that you need to give yourself enough time to actually look, maybe just usually a day or two, um, to have focused thinking before you respond. So, there are six things that you need to check out that I recommend that you check out before you accept an offer. And number one is the pay and total compensation, not just the base salary. Um, Look at the bonus structure, Equity if offered. Like I told you, I was going to get stock options after 6 months with that one job. The retirement match and how raises typically work with the organization. Number two are your benefits. Think about your health care coverage, your paid time off, and how quickly those benefits actually start. Because every company's benefits don't start on day one. Some companies have a waiting period that catches people off guard. Then, number three is the manager who you'll report to and the team you'll work with. Who you report to is very important, and what's their working style is even more important. If you can, talk to someone who's worked with that person on that team before, who will give you some valuable insight into how that person interacts with their direct reports. Then, number four, consider your workload and your expectations. For instance, what does a normal week actually look like? And I know it's probably kind of hard these days to name that because everybody's doing expected to do more with less. Um, is the schedule what was actually described, or does it sound like it stretches further once you're in the seat? Number five, your growth and stability. Is this role a part of a stable team? Or was it recently restructured? Is there a real path forward? And does it sound like a dead end, dressed up nicely position that will turn sour later? Then, number six are the organization's culture and values. Does how people describe the workplace match how you want to spend your time in your workplace? This one's harder to measure, but it's often the thing people wish they'd ask more about. Then think about red flags and deal breakers. You need to have yours in mind. So not every concern is equal. So it does help to sort them into two categories. A red flag is something that gives you pause, but might have a reasonable explanation once you ask about it. And maybe the job posting was vague about travel, and maybe you noticed a gap in the team's org chart. These are worth a direct question, not an automatic no. Then, a deal breaker is something that's simply incompatible with what you need, no matter the explanation. And if the pay genuinely can't support your life or the schedule conflicts with something non negotiable for you, then that's not a yellow flag to investigate. That's a stop sign. The mistake that most people make is treating every concern like a red flag, asking about it, getting a smooth answer, and moving on, even when the honest answer was actually a deal breaker the whole time. Knowing which category something falls into before you ask helps you actually hear the answer clearly instead of just wanting to hear reassurance. So, let's look at a couple of real examples across four fields. And these are going to play out. They play out in real situations, so keep that in mind. A remote role with unclear travel expectations. Now, the posting says remote friendly, but during the interview, travel gets mentioned twice, vaguely. That's a red flag worth a direct question. And that direct question should be, how often would this role realistically require travel? And is that written into the offer? Then the second one is a manager role with high turnover. If you notice the last three people in the position left within a year, that's not something to quietly wonder about. Ask directly. I noticed some turnover in this role recently. Can you tell me more about that? And the answer and how comfortable the interviewer seems giving that answer is going to tell you a whole lot. And if you're in a serious job search, or if you kind of keep yourself abreast of who's hiring on a regular basis, you'll sometimes see that. I know I've seen where I'm like, okay, it seems like they just hired for that role a month ago, or 2 months ago, or 6 months ago. Wonder what's going on. And so keep that in consideration. Then let's say you get an offer from a startup and it's a startup role with equity but weak benefits. Equity can be exciting, but it's not guaranteed money. If the benefits package is thin and the equity is doing a lot of persuading, ask for real numbers. How many people have actually seen a payout, for example, from the equity here historically? It is not against the rules for you to ask that. In fact, it shows that you've done your research, your necessary research. Or a healthcare role with shift expectations hidden in the details. If the schedule described in the interview doesn't match what's in the written offer, the gap is worth closing before you sign. Um, no offer, not after your first week. So just keep that in mind as well. Know what the schedule expectations are. If the schedule expectations are unreal or unreasonable for the way that you and your family live your life, and particularly if you are a single parent, and you don't have a strong extended support system, or even if you're married and you're a your parents, but your spouse may already work exceptionally long hours and or travel a lot, then if you have small children, you're going to have to give that schedule some consideration as to how it's going to impact your family life and your daily balance. So keep in mind that none of these examples depend on one industry. The platform works in tech, healthcare, education, retail, nonprofit, or corporate roles. Find that vague spot, ask the direct question, and actually listen to the answer. So here's how to make this concrete, instead of just a gut feeling. Score your offer from 1 to 5 in each of the 6 areas we covered: pay, benefits, manager, workload, growth, and culture. Don't just average the numbers. Look at whether any single area scored a 1 or a 2. A strong overall average can hide one genuinely weak spot, and that weak spot is usually the one that ends up mattering the most. Then sort your notes into 2 columns: questions to ask before deciding, and true deal breakers that don't need a question because you already know the answer. This turns something that feels off into something you can actually explain to yourself and to the employer if you decide to negotiate. So, let's look at some questions that you can ask before you decide to accept an offer. So, if you have any yellow flags on your scorecard, here are a few ways to ask about them without sounding confrontational. For one, you could ask, can you walk me through what a typical week looks like in this role? And I love to ask that question. And I know sometimes it's hard to for them to describe, but you usually still get a whole lot of valuable information just from the answer that they provide to you. You could ask, what would you say is the biggest challenge for someone stepping into this position? This is another one that I ask during every interview. Or ask, how has the team changed over the past year? And from that answer that you get, they should tell you if the team has grown, how many people may have left, if the manager has left and is new, valuable information that you just can't buy. Then there's another one. Is there flexibility in whatever the area of concern is, or is that fixed? For instance, the schedule. Is there flexibility in the work schedule? Like for instance, with my current employer, our core hours are 8:30 to 5:30, Monday through Friday. However, we have some people who have made arrangements to come in at 7 a.m. and leave at 4 p.m. And pretty much every half an hour leading up to 8:30. Some of us go in at 9 and leave work around 6. But we're still there most during the bulk of the core business hours. And so hopefully you see that reasonable employers or you know that reasonable employers who are good interviewers should expect these questions. And if asking a direct, respectful question makes someone visibly uncomfortable or evasive, that reaction is information too. Like I said, some information you can't buy, but it is so valuable. So, you can ask, what if I need the income? Or one question that comes to me often by my clients is, what if I need the income right now? And that was the situation I was in 2009. That's real and it does matter. But even under time pressure, spend the 1 or 2 days you likely have to at least identify your deal breakers. So you're saying yes with open eyes, not just relief. Another question that I get from job seekers is, what if this is my only offer? I understand that one too. Having one offer doesn't mean you have to accept it blindly. You can still ask your questions and negotiate what's negotiable. An offer, remember, isn't final until you sign it. It is an initial offer, and most employers are open to conversation. And finally, some job seekers ask me, what if I can't get clear answers to my questions? That in itself, like I said earlier, is useful information that you can't buy. A pattern of vague or dodged answers during the offer stage often previews what communication will feel like once you're actually there. And I'm going to add another one that I thought of, and I always advise new hires to think about this. If a new potential employer who extends an offer to you pressures you to break your current employer's policy about resignation notice period and how long you should work, which the standard is typically 2 weeks for staff level employees, but for managers, they may require a month's notice to give that person who has a higher level of accountability and decision making authority within the organization more time to smoothly transition and hand off projects to their replacement, and to give the employer an opportunity to start identifying who they might want to offer that role to now that it's going to be vacated. So I always tell people, if anytime an employer pressures you to not follow your current employer's rules, think about the type of employer that organization probably likely will be, because that's a red flag right there. So think about that. Then, um, just think about the fact that an offer deserves a clear look, not just a relieved yes. And if you want help scoring your own offer, grab the Offer Evaluation Scorecard and use the HRBN offer, salary, and onboarding strategist for hands on support working through the offer. And if you want deeper coaching support for your broader job search from A to Z, explore Career Search RX or the Public to Private Careers Transitions Program. Remember, you worked hard to get this offer. Give yourself the same care in deciding whether it's actually right for you. And before you go, if this video helped you, if you got value from it, give it a like, subscribe to HR by Nnamtique, and share this video with another workplace warrior who could use this information because my goal is to help you get closer to landing your dream job. And I can reach more people and help more people with the more likes, shares, and subscribes that I receive because that lets the algorithm know that this is valuable information that those of you who have watched feel more people should see. So I greatly appreciate it if you would like, share, and subscribe. Also, meet me in the comments and tell me in the comments what's the hardest part for you of evaluating an offer. Is it the pay, the manager, the workload, or just knowing what to ask, or tell me about an experience that you had, like I shared with you, and tell me how what the outcome was. Remember, becoming a stronger candidate starts with becoming a more informed, prepared, and confident one. Career success to you. Go get your new job.